I'm Charles Galda, your host for Vision New England's Church in Action program. This week, we're talking with Reverend David Payne about Relate Boston, a one-day conference for pastors on October 14th. David's the lead pastor at Lifesong Church in Sutton, Mass., a great friend and board member of Vision New England, and he serves as our moderator. He's also the organizer of Relate Boston. David, thanks for being with us.
Charles, I'm so privileged to get a chance to spend some time with you today and share about what's taking place, not just with Relate, but all the great things, of course, that you're seeing and we're experiencing the Lord's hand in across the New England region. It's pretty incredible to see what's taking place, and I'm privileged to spend some time with you.
Thanks. Well, maybe a place to start is to remind folks who you are. Give us a little bit about your background, your bio, how you came to be at Lifesong.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Lifesong is about a 20-year-old church almost, but I'm originally from Kansas City, grew up in the Midwest, met my wife in college, and she was from a pastor's family.
Your lovely wife, Janelle.
My lovely wife, Janelle. Yes. Almost 33 years married. So she's still lovely and I'm aging, but that's okay. But yeah, we met in college and moved to New England back in 1993. And so we've been here a long time. And I didn't go into ministry till I was really almost 30 years old. Did a bunch of other things, but was aware of the Lord's call on my life personally since I was graduating from high school. And I had a teacher come up to me at my high school graduation and just tell me, hey, David, I've been praying for your class and the Lord gave me a word for you. And I wanted to just share it with you. And I was 18, like every 18-year-old, I had plans for my future. And so I said, sure. But inside, I wasn't terribly interested. And he said to me, the Lord's told me to tell you that you're going to travel around the world, lead multitudes of people to Jesus. And I said, thank you. I like, what else do you say to that? I don't know what to say.
Thank you, but no, thank you.
I think I know what that means, and I'm going to let someone else answer that call. So I my dream was professional sports and then actuarial science. So I went off to ORU, played soccer there, got my degree in mathematics. And I had the same experience there. I had someone come up to me after a chapel and say, the Lord told me to tell you that you're going to travel around the world, lead multitudes of people to Jesus.
Was it the same words, David, or was it the gist was the same?
Exactly the same words.
That must have struck you.
It was a bit unsettling at 20 years old because it felt a little like the hound of heaven, as my father-in-law used to say, like, are you paying attention? Like, this is not a joke. And, but I had plans and I knew what I wanted to do. And I knew what I thought was the right thing to do. And, even though I grew up in a Christian home, I was at Oral Roberts University, so Christian university, all these things, but man, I knew what I wanted to do. So, it was unsettling in that sense. And it was, grounded. It was a very gravity, weighty kind of, whoa, this is the second time the same thing. But I didn't change anything. I didn't do anything different. I continued down the road I was on. Shortly after that, met Janelle. And of course, we got married, by the time we graduated and then moved up here. And I didn't even tell her really about it. I knew what I wanted to do. So being in ministry wasn't my future. It wasn't what she wanted. She didn't want to marry a pastor. She'd grown up a pastor's kid. That was all the exposure to ministry she needed. And so we moved to New England and we're involved in her dad's church, but I was involved in the business world, a director of sales and marketing, and did a bunch of things. And but I was about 26, Charles, when I was playing drums one night at church on a Wednesday night. And my father-in-law had a guest in, and she was ministering and turned around and pointed at the platform. And between me on the drum kit and where she was a bass player. And she turned and pointed in our direction and said, you need to come out here. And the bass player looked at her and said, me? And she said, no, move. And he moved, and she called me out from behind the drum kit and said a number of things. But one of them was, the Lord wants you to know that you're going to travel around the world and lead multitudes of people to Jesus. Same words, third time, 26 years old. And I was kind of wrecked. I was like, how do you ignore it? Right. I guess once I could ignore because I was 18, twice because I was in the middle of my college journey, and the potential dreams were ahead. But by that point, soccer wasn't going to be a professional thing. I wasn't going to be an actuary. Those things were past. So kind of my plans didn't play out. So maybe I just was willing to pay better attention.
Yeah.
And I said, whoa. And within a couple of weeks, I had another Wednesday night service. I just was worshiping. And I had just kind of this breakthrough moment with the Lord where I said, okay, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. But you got to make it happen. And I'm not going to go knock on doors and try and make it happen. And about 3 years later, I went into ministry full time. And, here we are now, 26 years later. Lifesong planted in 2006, about 6 years after I went into ministry, almost 7. And now we've been doing this at Lifesong for 19 years. And I've had the privilege to be in lots of places and preach the gospel in Tanzania and Africa and Cambodia and China and lots of places. So there's a measure of, I feel like the Lord through the last 25 years has been fulfilling what he said he would do with my life. Although it's not been my mission to get to every country and preach, I have gotten to go to a lot of places and train pastors and preach and all those things. But the greatest ministry I think we get to do is in the local church, not just our mission around the world, although I love it, but what we get to do in the local church. Local church ministry is a mission field. It just is the place God has placed me right here in the U.S. It doesn't have to be in Morocco or Sydney, Australia, or Beijing, China. It's right here. And so we love what we get to do at Lifesong. And we love, as you know, what is taking place in New England, like what we're a part of in the larger larger vineyard of New England, from the Cape to Bangor, Maine to, upstate Vermont and in the middle of Boston. Like there's amazing things that God is doing. And we love that we get to play a part in this region in bringing the good news of Jesus and fostering a pursuit of him, discipling people to know what it is to live like him what a privilege. What greater thing can we get to do with our life? It's hard for sure, but it's an exciting thing.
Well, and you've always been more about more than I just got to get my church going, right? Yeah. You've always cared about Greater Sutton, Greater Worcester, Massachusetts, New England, in your work with us and beyond. Yeah. And so that's translated not into just your work with Vision New England and other ministries. You do something else that's been about building up the church in New England. Talk about Relate Boston a little bit, please.
Yeah, thank you. Since we were planting the church, I shared this with our launch team in the process. I felt like that Lifesong was not just a church to be planted to do what it does where it's planted, which of course it is, but that we felt like part of our mandate was to help raise the spiritual watermark in New England. It's a broader calling. It's not all about what I can do to do it. Like I've got to go and preach, teach, expand my personal, ministry, trap, whatever. It's been, what can we do that would help churches, local pastors, local leaders, volunteer or paid, occupational or not, kind of raise the call to Christ in a broader sense, a vibrance, a passion, a deepening discipleship, like all of that across our region. How do we help do that? And so about 12, 13 years ago, Relate was founded by one of my best friends, really is my pastor, Pastor Randy Bezette, down at Bayside Community Church in Florida. And he had felt like God had given him a mandate to help churches around the nation, really, and not forget the little guy. Like that would be his phrase. Don't forget the little guy. And the reason that was a big deal is most churches in America are, less than 75 people, and in New England, less than 50. And those pastors have deeply important work to do where they're planted. Their size is not the determiner of their impact, the eternal consequence, spiritual, like it's just not. And too often churches that are smaller are neglected by churches that are larger, and not because they're trying to be mean. Every church has its own challenges and problems. But how does a church of 40 or 70 or 100 or 150 get a chance to be in places where they can be grown, they can be equipped, they can be given exposure to things? Like, what does that look like? So when he started Relate, that was really the mission. We're better together. Church size doesn't matter. Leave our ego at the door. Leave our bragging rights, our badge, our statistics. Leave it all at the door. Let's just love one another, go after Jesus together, share all the tools in our toolkit, good, bad, or ugly. And so for about a decade now, we've hosted a one-day event in New England called Relate One Day, Boston. And it's a single day event where pastors from all over New England, really from anywhere, but certainly all over New England, are invited to come with their leadership, whether they're volunteer or paid, doesn't matter, but bring as many as you want, and let's grow together. So what we know is that pastors in New England, in order to get to things like that, often have to travel to the Southeast or the Southwest, spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on travel and hotel, all the stuff to get that exposure. And most churches can't do that. Yeah. And so we just feel like there's a need. How do we create a space for those churches to get inspired? Sometimes you just need fresh inspiration, to get a place to be refreshed. Like, we're doing the work of ministry every week. We're preparing to pour out every week. And pastors need a place to get refreshed and be able to worship and not wonder if the sound system's going to break or the lead vocalist is going to do a great job. Like, where do they get a chance to just receive that way? Yeah. And then thirdly, how do they get a chance to get better, share problems? Do you have a solution to this problem? Or here's something we learned. Can I share it with you? Because sometimes there's great work being done that doesn't get transferred out of that 75 or 100 person church. It's only happening there. And what can we learn? So it's collaborative, it's restorative, it's refreshing, and it's inspiration. And we do that in one day at Lifesong Church. We bring in some speakers. We've got an incredible guy by the name of Pastor Jonathan Lambert coming in from Alberta, Canada. Very similar church context to New England, post-Christian context. So he's going to be here. A great Nigerian pastor, Pastor Victor Amir. He's actually a trained doctor, but he went into ministry full-time. He's coming up from Maryland. I'm going to be speaking. Pastor Randy, the founder, will be speaking. So it's going to be really good general sessions, but there's a ton of just very nuanced breakout applicational stuff. How do you do worship ministry well in a volunteer context for those that maybe don't pay musicians or don't have a lot of music? Like, what does that look like? How do we nurture a culture of worship in our church? How do we help our staff team thrive and not be overwhelmed with mental health challenges and Sabbath balance and staff culture? What does that look like? How do we lead that well? We got a whole breakout from Dr. Vinny Capetta on that very thing. There's all kinds of practical stuff. We've got a sessions on outreach and missions, strategic partnerships. Sometimes churches don't know how to lean into that or build relationships in their local towns and cities. So we're going to help with that. It's very varied, and it's all day. Like, we're kicking off at 8:30. We'll be here till 4:30. It's a full day, which I love. And I think that for so many pastors, in order to get that, you got to spend a lot of money. This is a way to not have to do that. And you get it in some context. New England is a little different than the Southeast, right? So
I think that's such an important point, because what we hear from folks who go to some of those conferences, not to say none of them are ever useful for anybody, sure, but what you'll hear from it is, well, we talked about stuff that churches from 500 up can do, which doesn't help me. Right. We talked about churches that have to be 2,000 and up, and it doesn't help me. But also, we talked about problems and solutions that don't apply to New England, because we're too small and different, so it just doesn't make the agenda. And that's right. Denominations have that same problem. And so it's great to hear you stepping into it. I always love it when there's partnerships and investment from big churches to small churches and small churches to big churches. Yes. Because that's the way the kingdom's supposed to work.
That's exactly right. And at the end of the day, Lifesong, there were 40 of us that planted our church. And so the fact that it's a quote, big church now doesn't mean that we didn't have to live through some of the challenges of 200 and 300 as well. Yeah. So we may be applying things differently today, but every big church began as a small church. Yeah. They all started with some of those problems. And so I think the nature of it in New England, for those of us that maybe aren't small anymore, is a deep heartedness for the difficulty and challenge and pain. Yes, there are problems being larger, but there are problems being smaller too. They don't just all go away when you get bigger. But we're not better because we're bigger. We're better because we're together. Yeah. We're better because your church at 100 can help my church at 1,000. Like that actually works that way. And so we've seen some really good stories and fruit from this over the last decade. And I expect this year will be no different in October. Of course, it's a beautiful time to get to spend a day apart down from wherever you are and just enjoy some time with some friends and guys that you can pray with and laugh with. You can tell great stories and celebrate, and you can tell sad stories and grieve with one another, because the last few years have been a hard journey in the church world, and we need some space to even grieve a little bit with one another as well as celebrate. So, I mean, I think it's a great event. Of course, we get the privilege of hosting it, so of course I do.
And the location is great too, because you can't get much more central in New England.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few places you can come to and go through where you don't have to go through Boston traffic if you're coming from that part of the New England, right? Where everything gets hung up in Boston traffic.
Yeah.
And so tell us, you just mentioned that, stories or outcomes, stuff from the past. Share, if you would, a couple of maybe 1, 2 that were meaningful or top of mind for you of what's happened through Relate.
Yeah. There's a lot of them. And I think that's why we keep doing it, right? You don't keep doing it if you don't hear the stories of outcomes. Like, the goal is not to put on an event that has a lot of people. The goal is to help as many people as possible raise the spiritual watermark in their region, encourage a pastor who's feeling defeated or depressed or on the verge of quitting to know, no, you're not alone, and we've got you. What do you need? Like that's the point. And so one that comes to mind, I think Charles was a young man a number of years ago, was planting a church, or had planted a church, and he'd been at it for a little bit, and he came to a Relate event. And one of the things that he shared as we got to know him a little bit was he literally just said, I just feel pretty alone. I'm new to the region. I'm not from the area. I didn't have 600 friends already in ministry before I planted. And I said, well, nobody does. Like, I think that's a misnomer. But certainly New England has its challenges, and the church landscape has its dynamics. And so he had landed up here to plant a church, didn't really have any relationships, felt very isolated and alone. He wasn't in a rural community. He was in a suburban community. And he's just like, I'm coming here. I don't know what I need or don't need, other than I know I need some relationship. Yeah. I just don't have any. And so, one of the outcomes of that, and I don't think that's unique to him, but one of the outcomes of feeling alone is when things are going bad, you presume that you're broken, or you presume that the Lord's hand is lifted, or that you misheard the call, because there's no one else around you to help you have perspective. And he was in that state. He didn't feel great. The challenges, because there are always challenges, but it was becoming personalized. I'm not good. I missed God. And so I said, hey, can we just get you introduced to some people? Like, let me help you know you're not alone. So, there are 200, 300, 400 people, whatever it was that year at the event. And so got to introduce him to some churches in other states, in his state. And you could literally, by the end of the day, his face was lighter, his countenance was better. And he reached out later and just said, thanks for the event. The information was great, but the connections to be able to share stories, ask for help, get some prayer, have someone to celebrate with. Hey, we broke X growth goal. We had our first small groups launch, and we had people say, I want to be a part of a Bible study. And someone could celebrate with me and remind me that God's hand is working, because the Lord loves his church more than you do. And he's going to build his house. So that was one that comes to mind that really, it is probably the most poignant story. I could list others that are just like it, but that's a poignant story of the purpose. The purpose is not the content. The purpose is the relationship. But all of us can use the tools and the equipping and the inspiration, the refreshing. The point is the people. So that's one. Another one that comes to mind.
David, before you go past that to the next one, I just want to draw out, because we have pastors who listen to our program, and we have lots of lay people who listen to the program. And they'll say, well, my pastor is not isolated like that, because we love our pastor and we take care of our pastor.
Right.
And so what would you say to that?
It's a great question. I think I would say two things. One is congregations that love their pastor are very important and necessary. But congregational perspective on the connectivity and support of a pastor is not ignorant in a bad way. It's just, you can't know. You can't know what it's like to be a pastor and carry the weight of a congregation that you take before the Lord. And because, today you feel great and you love your pastor, but he's going to say something you don't like, and you're going to have an opinion about it at some point. And he's dealing with that every single week. Yeah. And so that's the nature of leading a church, but that needs a space to be able to process, to be able to pray, to be able to hear encouragement, to be able to hear, I've heard this, how did you deal with it? And that isn't the congregation.
That's right.
That's outside of it. And it's even hard in denominations. Like it just is. It doesn't make denominations bad. It is a relational need that can only be filled by other pastors, not by a congregation. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I would say is there are things that congregations see and think about functionally, pragmatically, executionally for ministry that are only informed up to the level of their purview. That the level of their awareness of ministry is congregational. And maybe they're an elder or a deacon, so they have a little higher purview. But the pastor is seeing things from a seat that no one else can. That's not mean. It's just the nature of the seat. Yeah. And so the balancing of things to make decisions to best lead and disciple that congregation can't be seen and known best by that congregation. Yeah. And so there's a place of equipping and fulfilling that can only come outside that group of people. And those are the two things that come to mind quickly, Charles.
And there may be stuff that I just can't talk about with my congregation either.
Oh, absolutely.
In some cases, it's not a safe place for me to talk about this topic.
Yep.
In other cases, and I don't mean any kind of moral issue or something. It's just like bringing this up is not going to be helpful to the congregation.
Absolutely.
And I need places where I can work it out with people who understand what I'm talking about. Yes. And I think about this, the kind of thing where when we suffer, and you tell somebody else about it, sometimes that's really helpful and therapeutic.
Yeah.
Other times they start saying things and asking questions that you sit there, you're halfway through and you're like, I shouldn't have brought this up. They're never going to get
totally
it. Right.
That's a great example, Charles. Yeah. It's, and it feels a little bit like a double-edged sword, right? People say, I can't hear from anyone who hasn't been through what I've been through. And there's reasons for that, to your point. Flip side of that is, man, I'd really like to hear from somebody who hasn't had to go through what I've gone through.
Right.
You never have to go through, but it's a difficult dynamic. And I think, to your point, having a place to be able to talk about things that you can be very transparent about that wouldn't risk offending Johnny fifth pew, because Johnny's in the fifth pew of your church.
Right.
And it's not meant to be offensive, but it really is a challenge.
Yeah.
So it's that space is necessary.
Jeff,
and by the way, we find I've heard this story repeatedly through the years that pastors will say, I'm so great. My congregation actually thanked me for taking a day to get better. Churches should celebrate. You should encourage your pastor to do things like this. Go and spend a day praying with guys, learning from guys, getting refreshed, hearing from God, getting off site in a space like that. It's not a big investment. Maybe it's a couple of nights in a hotel and a drive down from Portsmouth, Maine, or what. It's not a big investment, and it will pay huge dividends for that church's culture.
And I think one thing I see pastors value so much is worship that they don't have to put together.
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, you're in church, you're worshiping too. And it's like, you're running something.
Yeah.
And now I have to speak, and now I have to, and there's great spiritual stuff that happens in that. But pastors rarely get the opportunity of, I have no task to do, but sit here and be with God and worship in a corporate setting.
Charles, I love that you are aware of that. That is hard sometimes for congregants to understand. And that doesn't make them bad, but it's the difference between sitting in that seat or not. That's all that is. And you feel the burden for making sure worship does go well. And is the sound system going to act up? And, is Sally's voice going to crack? And is Jimmy going to make him, is the guy going to get the lyrics right? And oh my gosh, no one will sing if he messes them up. And it's all on your mind.
And who's up next, and why haven't they moved any place, and what, and why did that mic just go out, and that's the wrong slide, and
all those things.
Yep.
So at something like this, we do that so that, your pastor can come and bring his team, and they can just go, like, if you want to walk around the room and worship, do that. If you want to get on your knees before the Lord, do it. You have no obligation other than to just be in the presence of God and let his Spirit of God minister to you and just breathe. Literally, this song by Maverick City we've been singing lately, just breathe. We were made to breathe. It's a miracle. The breath of God in our lungs is a miracle. Let's just worship. And this is a space you can do that. We built in a lot of time, morning and afternoon sessions for just worship for pastors. So I'm glad you mentioned that. It's an important thing.
So David, out of time. So remind us, where is it? When is it? How much does it cost? How can we find out more?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. If you would go to the website, right, is lifesongonline.org/relate. Very simple, lifesongonline.org/relate. All the info is there, the speakers and the schedule and all the breakouts will be up there, whatever. And the link to register. It's inexpensive. It's about $50 for the first person, the senior pastor. I think it's 25 or 30 for additional staff. So it's a very, very short cost. And you can bring, we have churches that bring 20 people. They bring a bunch of lay leaders, a bunch of staff, whatever. You can come just you and your spouse. We have actually an event the night before, on Monday night, October the 13th. We have a senior pastors dinner for senior pastors and their wives, if they bring them, just to get together and spend time together. There's no agenda. There's no pitch. It's not sign up for this or register for that. It's just come eat a meal and be together and make some new friends and discover that you're not alone. So we encourage guys, if they can, come down on Sunday night, stay the night, hang out on Monday with guys, or stay Monday night for the senior pastors event, stay for the conference all day on Tuesday, and then get together with another church on Wednesday morning and just kind of workshop it together. What can we apply together? So lots of ways to break it out, and it's still really short money for them to do it. So October the 13th is the senior pastors event at night, and October the 14th is the event itself. And it's, again, all there at lifesongonline.org/relate.
And if anybody has trouble finding it, go to visionnewengland.org. You can email us and we'll get you connected.
That's fabulous. Yeah, for sure.
David, thank you so much for your ministry, for our friendship, but thank you for doing Relate. It's such an impactful thing, and I'm so glad you're doing it again this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles, for the opportunity to share about it and for all the work that Vision New England is doing. We feel like Relate complements the unity that they pursue in the mission of Vision New England. We get a chance to accelerate it practically through Relate. So thank you.
Great, thanks. To support this program and accelerate evangelism, go to visionnewengland.org and click on Donate, or click Member to become a partner with us. This program is supported by the Palau Association, who are dedicated to proclaiming the good news, uniting the church, and impacting cities worldwide.
At Leadership Transformations, we believe that when you have the right resources to help you slow down and experience a deep and refreshing connection to God, you can become the discerning leader you know you are created to be. Friends, Steve Macchia here, and I have a free gift for your soul. It's called Pathways. Pathways is our weekly email aimed at offering you soul-nourishing content for the journey. It contains readings, prayers, spiritual practices, a link to the Discerning Leader podcast, as well as information about all of our upcoming soul care retreats, workshops, and online offerings. So head on over to leadershiptransformations.org today and sign up for this free resource. It will help you slow down and be more. God bless you, friends.